That's a good mark there, boys.
I heard it.
That was tough.
Down I went, and I mean down I went. It couldn't possibly get any wetter. The bike was actually floating.
Yeah, baby!
Because they found us. They found us.
Nothing a couple of guys with a rope can't cross.
Tombé.
J'ai mal au bras.
Does it turn in?
Oh! No, he did say he secretly wanted to be a gynecologist.
A lot of new openings. And then I stopped, and all of a sudden, bro, and I said, I hope his balls are big, but I hope they float.
Hit it.
There was water in there. Dave is ingratiating himself to the staff.
I'm glad you're finding that as enjoyable as I did.
That's a great intro. That's
that's good.
yeah, very good. We had a lot of fun. I don't know how you found all the good clips and 50 videos.
So I would like to introduce everyone. I'm Dallas from the Traction eRag. We've been doing silly underground grassroots things for a long, long time. We had a digital magazine for a long time that has gone bottoms up during COVID. But the good thing is we've been doing underground off-road rides that sort of overlap that period. So now we're full-on off-road and dual sport riding. We're based out of BC and having lots of fun. I want to introduce these guys. We have Ivan and Riley from the Awesome Players. I'm sure some of the people that are in the audience right now know who you guys are, but if you don't, I came onto them in 2010 when they first started. They were OGs on YouTube. They got on there early. And then what happened was I enjoyed your guys' stuff because it felt like the awesome sauce or the purity that I value so much in off-road motorcycling, which is it's not about manufacturers, it's not about what you're on, it's about truly having adventures in the woods with a group of friends and doing it all wrong most of the time until you finally sometimes get it right. Is that a fair way to describe what you guys do?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's interesting that you say that, because when my wife watches the video, she always says, because she's not into motorcycling at all, she always says that the best part for her is she feels like she's there and has this little, secret view of what actually goes on with a bunch of guys who are into this thing, and gets this kind of, voyeuristic insight into this group of people.
When we started the eRag back in, say, 2007 and 2008, social media didn't really have the rise. YouTube wasn't a really big thing at the time. And what the goal was for us was I wanted to capture the secret ingredient, the feeling of friends when you're riding off-road on the trail. And weirdly, you and your gang and my gang were all in the same area, which was like Ottawa, Quebec bordery area, similar terrain, Canadian Shield type terrain, and that's what we were trying to capture. And I feel like you guys are after the same thing, like those clips, and it's all about voyeuristically coming along on those rides with a bunch of guys that get along well and want to play with off-road motorcycles in the bush and push until the adventure goes awry.
Yeah, exactly. Like we have a saying, which is bad riding makes good video. And, because I think when you talk about adventure, I mean, adventure for someone who would be like an expert rider, they could come on one of our rides. It obviously wouldn't be much of an adventure. And I think for us, especially in the early days when we first started riding in 2010, and everybody had big bikes and not even, very aggressive tires, every ride where we got off pavement was an adventure. Like we would come, you know, everyone had busy lives, and we found out we all had these bikes and we weren't riding them, because every time we tried to schedule a ride, everyone had, you know, family commitments or something. There was never a day when, you know, 3 or 4 guys had nothing to do. So we forced ourselves to hit the road at like 6 in the morning so that we could get some riding in, and we would all get back. In those old videos, our saying was home by noon, so that we could at least get out and ride and get home. And that kind of forced us to use these toys we had all bought, you know, with these dreams of having these adventures. And then when we started doing it, and a lot of us had previous, you know, on-road riding experience, we would be gone for 4 hours, and we could come back and actually, you know, sit around and talk for 2 hours about the adventure that it was only a 4-hour adventure to start with, because so many things can happen. Well, if you go on a street ride for a weekend, unless you nearly get killed by somebody, you don't have much to talk about, you know?
Yeah. And I'm super interested in how you guys got started, like 2010. Ivan, you can go first. Like, what was your impression about this world, and then how did you jump in? Like, what is your background?
Well, my background's a bit different. I wasn't part of the Awesome Players in 2010. I was still dreaming of owning my first motorcycle. Actually, I got my license. I was 18, just at my last semester in college, and it only happened like 20 years later that I actually got it. But I always wanted. It's not true. When I got my license, I rode a bit in Europe, but it's all on pavement and all that. And I always wanted to do a bit of off-road riding and all that. And that's what I liked. That's what I dreamt of. And that's when I said at 40, I guess your midlife crisis is that's it. I'm done. I'm going to buy my bike and get into it. And it was been watching YouTube and things like that, and happened to stumble on the Awesome Players. And I joined a bit later, but I saw that. It's like, these are just regular dudes like going out and having fun on bikes, and they're not like always watching. You can be impressed by the Graham Jarvis and Paul Tara's videos and all that, but for the regular schmoo, you know, you're it's pretty high level. So
Yeah, that's why I love what you guys are doing, because like you are displaying the reality of what a regular schmoo, what it's like to buy a motorcycle and, you know, be super intimidated and nervous about the whole prospect of it, and you don't even know what to do. But your channel, I feel like it makes it less intimidating to try.
True.
Yeah.
It's also even more impressive when you figure out, you see this video that you've been following, and you're saying they're somewhere, like most of the videos are, they're in the US or Europe and all that. And then you got a Hungarian guy that starts saying some French Canadian slang in the middle and says, hey, wait a minute, these guys are local. So on top of that, you know,
Right.
that's how I got in touch with the Awesome Players.
I mean, we've had, one of the highlights of starting this endeavor, because initially we were putting these videos up for our own purposes. You know, it was just fun to watch. I mean, even now it's fun for me to go back and watch this 10-12 year archive of all these things we've done. But over the years, man, I don't know how many times, I don't know if it's been 40, 50, 100, we've gotten notes from people saying either I have an F800 GS or a DR650 or whatever, and I never really took it off road or decided to go to an event or do anything till I started watching your videos. Or I watched your videos and I sold my Honda Shadow and I went out and bought a GS or a KTM or something and changed the direction of my motorcycling. And I think that's really cool. Like, I look at that and I go, yeah, so now you've, you know, because my street riding, which started in, 1987 or so, just kind of fizzled out. And all the guys I was riding with, it kind of fizzled out too, because within the circle of Montreal, we'd ridden everything 1,000 times. And then when we got into the dirt, we realized you can even ride the same route 1,000 times. And just by changing the pace and making a few different choices, it can still be exciting and an adventure without having to, jump on a plane and fly to Argentina.
We don't call them choices. We call them bad decisions.
Bad decisions, yes. And then you get in with a bunch of guys. And now you throw in the kind of groupthink mentality where, 5 people can make way worse decisions than one person. And you're much braver when you get to that water crossing. And you realize, like, yeah, if I was here by myself, there's just no way I would do this. But we'd all roll up there, and if nobody's going to say no, this is a horrible idea, then it's just someone, starts off, and then even if that's a disaster, everyone else now has to try. Because if you were you went in and fell over, it's not like they went, oh, that was a bad decision. Now it's like, no. I made a bad decision, or whoever, and now everyone else has to give it a shot too.
I feel like the people that are telling you that they went and they sold their Honda Shadow and they decided to try what you're doing is the highest possible compliment you can get as a YouTuber, that you've actually influenced the course of someone's life. And of course, because you guys are doing this, and I've been doing this for a long time as well, just on the enduro side, it literally changes your life. Like, being on off-road motorcycles changes your life. It changes your friend groups. It changes your relationships. So yeah, it's for me, it's the highest compliment when someone says something like that. The other thing is, I feel like when you go from a life of street riding and then you see the adventure siren song, and you go to make that leap from pavement to gravel, people don't realize you can't make that leap alone. Motorcycling on the street for a long time has been a solo pursuit. Zen and the art of motorcycling, motorcycle maintenance. Like, you're in your head, you're thinking about philosophy and life. And then now that adventure is really hot, talk about the idea of that transition from, like, figuring out that you need a group of guys to ride adventure bikes with, because it's just not safe if you and not fun either.
Yeah, like, we came across, we were just riding, a friend of Mark and I were riding not too far from here, and I had just bought my 901, and I really didn't want to bang it up. It's still my pretty new bike, and of course, we ended up doing some gnarlier off-roading, and we came around a corner, and there was a guy standing there in his underwear beside a T7, and he was, so we stopped.
You don't see that every day.
No, you don't see that every day. And he was, we had a nice chat with him, and he said, well, I'm just overheating a bit, so I'm, taking off some layers. And we said, are you going down this trail or whatever? And he said, no, I'm by myself. So I'm turning around because I went down there and there was like a beaver dam and some water and whatever. And we said, well, we're heading that way. So he ended up, coming with us until we got down to our destination. And I thought, yeah, it's a totally different mindset being by yourself. I mean, there's the safety thing and the courage thing, and now with the addition of intercoms, not only are you, which I think is a big safety thing as well, the social thing now expands to while you're riding. When we didn't have intercoms, we would ride and stop and say, oh man, that river crossing was amazing. And we'd lose all this time because we'd have a moment and want to talk about it. And now with intercom, we can have a moment and just roll right through and talk about that moment and share, I thought I was going to fall. Did you see that rock? I didn't, as it's happening, which is, great.
Yeah. I remember that time when we were doing the Classique, and the guy with the F800 was by himself.
We found a guy. We found a guy so stuck on an F800 in the woods by himself. And he wasn't part of the event. He just happened to be there, and he was separated from his buddy, and he had buried the bike in some clay, and we had
sank to the axles. It was a monument embedded into the ground.
We had, I think, nine guys on our team. We could not, with 9 guys, lift that bike out of the hole it was stuck in. We had to free this bike out, and then
forever.
Yeah, basically this guy had been trying, I think he said, for like 2.5 hours to get.
He was in his underwear too, because he was overheated. The bike was overheating. Yeah. He was overheating. He was trying to get out by himself. He was by himself, stuck. We hadn't come by there as a group and all that. He would have been done. Like, that bike would be still there in the bush
so
today.
It was crazy. We readjusted his clutch that was burning out, and we took him to lunch, and then he was fine. But yeah,
some guys do it solo. Hats off to them and all that. Like, you get the pros and all that. Like Lyndon Poskett, I admire and all that. I've chatted with him and all that. It's great, but it's also, you have to have a solid mind and confidence in your skills and your abilities, and to know when to. Okay, that's enough. I got to stop here.
You can't make as many mistakes when you're alone. Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
tomber? C'est correct? C'est correct? He fell. Oh!
What?
He fell. He's backwards, kind of pinned under his bike. Holy shit. C'est correct?
Ouais, j'ai mal au bras.
He hurt his arm.
Hey, Frederick. Coming back.
It's got to...
Coming back.
It's got to sortir. Ça va?
Not good.
Prends une minute là.
Man, je sais vraiment pas ce qui s'est passé.
We were pretty sure that Frederick had broken his arm. Not the bone sticking out kind of break, but it was broken nonetheless.
All right, now that we've taken our drugs, the plan is we are going to double Frederick out of here and then come back for his bike.
As you turn in. Perfect.
Right. We're going down.
Shit. Bushwhacking now. Tunnel of love.
Now I've got Ivan on the back, and we are heading back to pick up the mighty Honda CRF 250.
Nice. Alrighty.
Gonna get on.
You are the leader of the pack. Le chef de l'équipe.
Away we go.
Oh yeah, no way we go.
Looks like this trail wasn't quite finished with us yet. There was one big tree down here, and it was not in a spot where going around it was going to be easy.
Oh, hey! Woo!
Holy cow, huh?
Extra large risk.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna hold.
Yes, that's the best way. Oh, nice.
Nice.
Whoa. Yeah, up until there. That's what I was saying.
Fred's on his way to the hospital,
Last meal.
but he stopped for beer and pizza. Best day ever.
Best day ever. Best day ever.
It's funny. Did you know? I liked it in the video. I forgot that Fred was the one cutting the branches off the tree and pulling on the rope with his good arm. So that was nice.
That's what I was watching. I was like, is that the guy with the broken arm and the saw?
Because we were so tired by then. It was like 32 degrees. Everything was, going off the rails. And so, Fred was motivated. And he actually just jumped into the chat and was like, oh, no, they're talking about this again. So, that was a great.
That was a good
It's
ride.
funny because it was a great day.
It was
And
a
then
great day.
the part of the video that's missing is as we were driving home, we had the 3 bikes in the trailer. Fred lives right near the big fireworks
Factory.
manufacturer distributor on the highway. So every now and then they set off fireworks to test them. So we were driving along and these fireworks went off and it was 11 o'clock at night. We're exhausted. So we're all watching the fireworks. And then Fred goes, train tracks. And there was one of those train tracks
Just launched.
where you get air. So the truck went over it. The trailer got air.
3 bikes.
3 bikes. I could see the trailer in my mirror with the 3 bikes. We landed. They were well strapped down. So yes, that was a good day.
Yeah, I see Frederick is in the chat. That's great.
Yes. No, Fred is. You know what? That was. We hadn't known Fred that long at that point, and that's where we were like, yeah, that guy.
This guy's a good
not
guy.
a complainer, man. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, talk about that idea. Talk about like I love I'm fascinated by human psychology and behavior generally, but like talk about etiquette in a group. Like you guys don't realize that you're so far down this rabbit hole at this point. There's people watching that are not even close to doing the adventures or the type of adventures you're doing. And you don't recognize, or you may not recognize where you are. What would you say to them? Talk about etiquette and like getting into this and intimidation and.
Well, I think it can be intimidating for people because when you have a group where people have been riding together for a long time and you get an email, like I remember when Fred reached out to us through YouTube, I think, and said, hey, you guys are local. Maybe could we go for a ride? And I had a little chat with him and I said, fine. And then I said, hey, Ivan, there's a new guy coming on the ride. He's going to meet us at the gas station near your house in case he's a psycho.
Yeah. We sent them off we met him at another address in my place.
Just because we were like, not that it's ever happened, it was just so that, if the guy it doesn't pan out, he doesn't know where you live. And then we met Fred, and sometimes you meet someone like that, and for whatever reason, they just dovetail right into the crew, like instantly, and I think I don't think there's anyone that we ride with on a regular basis where it was like, oh, it took a year for them to fit in. Most of those guys, like Fred, was like a right fit. Our buddy Super Dave, he had his F700 with crappy tires, and we went on a ride with him, and we just kept doing more and more and more until we ended up doing a trail we call White Acres, which was a nightmare. And his bike's buried. His brand new bike is buried, and we're pulling it on a rope, and he's having a great time. And then the next weekend, you phone him up and say, "Hey, we're going on a ride. You're like one of the crew," because it's just a perfect fit. And I don't know what the background is, because everyone's like, I started this when I was 45. A lot of the guys are younger. We're all guys with families. Ivan's got 3 daughters. I have 3 daughters. Fred's got 3 daughters. Everyone's busy house and cutting grass and all of that. So everyone's kind of living, I guess, the same experience, and maybe that's why we all need the same thing to get out on a Sunday morning and just get away. And because let's face it, when you're bombing down a trail that you've never been down before, it's not like when you're on a road trip and you're on your Goldwing like I used to do, and you're thinking about life and drifting off into different thoughts. I mean, you're in that moment and you're focused on what's going on, and all the troubles of your day-to-day life, they might still be there, but man, they're not front and center while that's happening.
What would you say to a man or woman that were, because I run into these people regularly as well, they're in their 40s or their 50s, and they're daydreaming secretly about trying an off-road motorcycle, knowing that's completely foreign to them. What do you think about 40 or 50-year-olds picking up adventure or dirt bikes for the first time?
Well, how old were you when you started?
Well, I wanted to start way before, but because of family and all that, you postpone those things sometimes. But I said, yeah, go for it. Of course, absolutely. And probably doing adventure bike is more of a logical choice than saying, I want to do motocross, or hard enduro, And it's like, yeah, adventure bike, you can ride on the road, you can do it mellow, and you can choose your level of riding what you want. Like, adventure riding is the ride that you make. It's like, just get out of your comfort zone a bit. On the pavement, if it's like your daily commute to work, it's not adventure riding. It's kind of boring. But saying, hey, that gravel road that heads down to wherever, I've never been down there, not even with my car. Maybe I should just go down there, and start there.
Yeah,
absolutely get into it, and take the bike you have. It starts there, and then after that, you say, hey, I like this more and more. Maybe I should get something that's more capable and get into it a bit more. But yeah, why not? 40, sure.
Yeah, like I started at 45. Last year, I helped. There's a ride here called the Ride des Débutants, like the beginner's ride. And I went on that last year just to be a sweeper, like a helper. And, we did, I was the sweeper on like the easy ride. And it was amazing because, all of these people who had, little to no experience, we did some interesting little trails, nothing super hard, some gravel roads, and then some kind of ATV trail, but it was a little slippery. And, I almost felt envious of these guys because they were, having this amazing experience, and it had nothing to do with that the terrain was killer or whatever. It was because it was like that first time experience, like when someone tells me they just got their motorcycle license and they got a bike, I'm like, oh man, like that's the best. Like, I envy you. And they're like, what do you mean? You got this super nice Euro bike with all the whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. You got your burned out Honda. This is the best because you're at the beginning, and, seeing those people, in that one day, just the transition from being scared of the wiggly feeling on a gravel road to within a day, zooming along at 70 kilometers an hour, nothing crazy. And you just go, wow, like it's, and how some of the people were so proud of themselves at the end too, because it's like, oh man, like I've overcome, because let's face it, when you're doing that, there's anxiety, right? And part of it is, if you can overcome that and without getting hurt, then it's a win, And I think that's why we, after our rides, when we sit at the terrace and have a beer afterwards, you didn't accomplish anything in the concrete way of building a house out of bricks, but I mean, you do feel like, oh man, we went out and we overcame obstacles, and a lot of the times we had to work together as a team to get it done. We couldn't have done it on our own, and something broke and we fixed it, and we cut down we had to cut down a log and move a tree, and you just you just get a feeling that, like I said, I rode on the road for 20 years on Goldwings and stuff. I enjoyed it, but I never had a feeling like that ever, in that.
Yeah, I don't think lay people have those types of adventures in their lives in this modern world ever, or very rarely. And usually if it's that kind of adventure for a layperson, it's a traumatic event in their life, where we do this every weekend and have all those adventures, and it's not only is it a good time that we all look forward to, but I think it changes the way that you approach daily life, and it makes you a stronger, more resilient person in general.
Oh, for sure. Like I think, I remember when I was really young, I was in the reserves, and I remember doing a lot of things there that I didn't think I could do, and also bonding with a lot of people. And some of those are still good friends now. And I find in the dual sport, adventure bike, whatever you want to call it, there's that side of it too, where you go through certain situations where you have no choice but to continue. You get to a bottom of a hill and the trail peters out, and you realize we got to get back up that hill, and we can't. So we're going to spend half a day getting all these bikes to the top of that hill, because there's no other option. Or like with Fred's broken arm, like we have to get Fred out of the woods. Like there's no option. Even if we had the satellite, in reach, we could have pushed the button, but no one's coming because you can't get an ATV in there or a Jeep or whatever. So who's coming to save us?
Well,
Nobody's coming.
They would have
save
came to
us.
save us, but we would have walked out in a shorter time.
We would have
by the
waited
time we
there
got
while
there,
while,
it's
while
like-
the local fire department with their ATVs chainsawed their way in there and made a road. So we never got to the point where we felt we needed to push the button, but we had it. And then we worked together, and I can say that knowing Ivan and Fred as well as I do, there wasn't any anxiety that these are the wrong guys to be in this situation with.
Right.
Like it was like, if I need to, if I'm going to be with some guys and something's gone off the rails and we need to get it done, well, these are the guys you want to be with.
That's one of the key things when you it's important to have a good group of friends that you're going to ride with and all that. And the key is knowing after a while, everybody knows their limits and what they like and what they don't. And then when you do these rides, when you're riding, you're always going into terrain saying where everybody's going to be comfortable, even if a situation like what happened to Fred happens. If we like the first ride we did with Fred and all that, for sure, we were not going into what we did there in Papineau-la-Belle where he broke his arm. It's you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So it's the group of friend is adventure riding, especially it's a lot more fun with friends, and it's a savior too.
Yeah, 100%. We've been doing this for a long time. We've been putting on rides and hosting rides for a long time, and we went down a rabbit hole of elitism for a while as young men in our 30s. And I think, I forgive myself for that time because we were in our 30s, and we felt like we had something to prove, and it was elite, and we wanted to push and push and push. And it was like only the hardcore people could survive with us for a period of time. But now that I'm older, I'm in my 50s now, I've reflected, and what I like the most is what you said earlier, Riley, which was I love to sweep new riders or get involved with newer riders, because I don't like the way that, and I don't know if this exists in your community or not, so we could talk about this. I like the idea of, or I didn't like the idea of, the way enduro riding works is that you get invited to a ride, and the men on that ride are going to try to kill you. And then if you don't complain and you survive, then you're okay. But
Right.
the problem with that for me is that everyone doesn't survive and everyone doesn't have a good time, but it scares them away from coming back, because it's like, I don't want to do this, and if this is what this is not for me. And they don't get a gentle entry into the sport where they stay. They get a really abusive entry by a bunch of intolerant men, and it's just no fun. So we've changed our perspective 180 degrees into the idea of like, what's good for the sport. And what's good for the sport, in my opinion, with enduro and adventure, the rise of all this stuff is just fabulous, in my opinion. It's the idea that we give these people a great entry into the sport so they stay and the sport grows and we can be legitimized, instead of a bunch of weirdos, a bunch of dudes out in the woods riding dirt bikes, which it used to be 15 years ago. Maybe 20 years ago, it used to be that weird. But now it's almost acceptable to ride an off-road motorcycle as an adult.
Yeah, and I think especially on the adventure dual sport side of things, because it's not an extreme sport. Like the groups like Ride Aventure and those who've worked hard with the ATV clubs, the Federation of Off-Road Motorcycles here in Quebec, that's gotten it opened up so that a lot of the we can use those trail networks that are created by the ATV clubs. A lot of that's about saying this is not a young guy on a 2-stroke 250, wearing work boots and a plaid shirt going 1,000 miles an hour. It's a 50-year-old guy on a BMW who's going to putter down through your trail network and wants to explore, and he's not tearing it up, and he's not going 1,000 miles an hour. And that's really the group that's kind of in that adventure segment. And that's where,
you go ahead.
Well, that's where groups like Ride Aventure, and Moto Trail Aventure did a lot of work on that in the past, about bringing people into the actual riding side of things, because the bikes are selling. That's for sure. If you look at the sales numbers, that's, those numbers are there. But getting people actually out there, actually using the bikes, as and there is, even in that community, there's the whole, people just buy a GS, put big aluminum bags on it, and drive it to Starbucks. There's kind of a snobby thing there. And as a guy who had an 1150 GS for 10 years with aluminum bags and never went off road, I totally see where that's coming from. And it was a great bike for what I used it for. But I think those people are just really missing out.
I couldn't agree more. We're going to take a really short break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the organizations that you ride with. I want to talk about La Classique and how valuable that ride is, and the history of that ride, and why it's so important in your geographic region. So short break, and we'll be right back.
What the hell is an eRag?
Oops!
Hello, ladies.
Well, we don't have this technology in Europe. We just piss ourselves.
Well, this looks a little weird.
Tell her to make up the ingredients for an assault casserole.
I'm so excited, I've just wet myself again.
Traction eRag. Traction eRag.
Digital magazine called the Traction eRag.
So what is an eRag? For a decade, we published a trashy magazine called the eRag. E for electronic and rag, because that's what you call a trashy, waste of time magazine. We filmed Graham Jarvis and Colton Haker together with our pals, Larry and Paul, two inspirational riders in their 70s. We put on rides, lots of rides.
I'm here in beautiful British Columbia for Grisbait, a week-long dirt bike riding extravaganza that I might just survive.
Oh my God! Wow! Grisbait, Big Rock Candy Mountain, Recon Run, Zero to Hero, Woods Runners, Parch Canucks, and that's just to name a few. We continue to host our shenanigans for one reason. We're proud of Canada, and I want to show you this country, our version of this country, which is rural, sincere, real. We've applied our experience in university-level sports education to dirt bike skills. We break down skills into separate components. Each skill builds on the next. We're really proud of the curriculum we've refined over a decade of teaching. So what do you think? Come play with us in the BC mountains and we will show you the time of your life.
We're back. Gents, in the background, Anthony was poking me and saying, I need to say what I'm about to say, which is a man that was going to attend our ride on May 6th has had a bad outcome with his penis reduction surgery.
Came up short.
Yeah. Bad outcome. It's like you mentioned. Like you mentioned earlier, Riley. It could have been the second time he's had a bad outcome. Anyway, this gentleman cannot come to the ride. This ride that you're seeing on the screen right now, and we need one more man to come along. The ride is simple. It's incredibly inexpensive. There's only 6 gentlemen come along. It's a dual sport ride, and what we're doing is we are sending adventurous gentlemen out on dual sport bikes, and they have no idea where they're going. And we've come up with these tracks with the local dual sport mafia here, and they're going to test these tracks for us. So small group, we're going to put them in groups of 3, and this gentleman did not do well with the surgery. I don't know why he had to get reduction surgery so close to the ride. I guess he was worried about the seat comfort. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, if anyone out there is interested in coming along on this ride,
yeah, my surgery went well.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared the details earlier. So we're looking for a victim. If you are interested in coming along, it's on May 6th. I know it's super short notice, but we are trying to give this gentleman back his deposit, and we need another victim. So if anyone wants to come along, email us. Anyway, back to there it is. Back to let's talk about La Classique. So I've known about this ride for a long time, but you guys are way more intimately involved in this. So just give me a very short history background on where this ride came from, and what valuable purpose it serves in the adventure riding community.
La Classique is started, I don't know what edition we're at now.
15 almost?
15, 16 years. Originally it used to be called La Ride à Touche in our very good Franglish from Quebec. So it's Touche. Touche was the nickname of one of the founder of Ride Aventure. Ride Aventure being the Quebec adventure bike community. And every spring he'd put out a ride for a couple guys, put it on, but back in the day we had forums and all that, and said, hey, I'm putting my ride together. Let's go for a ride, start here and there one day, thing like that. And it became every spring this event until the 6th or 7th edition. And then it became really what they called La Classique, because more and more people got word of it and got on board and wanted to ride. So then you had to start having groups and asking for people who wanted to lead a group. So I'll supply the tracks. We needed a leader, a sweep, and that's how it started off. And now it's a Marc Chartrand who took over Ride Aventure, and it's a huge. They call it a Moto Fest this year. It's the Moto Festival. It's the season opener.
Yeah.
For me, it's it's not as much the ride now, it's the social part of it, the gathering of so many people on adventure bikes of different sizes, of backgrounds, of age and all that, just want to get together and start off the season saying, let's go ride bikes in the bush. And it's how I got to connect with the awesome players. Like I joined, it was actually in 2014 when I got paired up with the guys on from the awesome players and all that. And it's how I also got to know people in the community, because I bought my bike and I was by myself,
Yeah, no, it's become the early rides. You showed up and you rode, and then you went home, and they had a dinner, And now that it's a multi-day event and you camp on site, it's taken on this whole other flavor. So now like last year I rolled in on Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I left Monday morning at 9 or 10 in the morning.
And we rode one day.
So then on the Sunday, we had a great ride on the Saturday. On the Sunday, there was demo rides and all the manufacturers were there. I took a Harley out for a spin, a Husqvarna, a bunch of bikes. There was a big kind of party with a band on Saturday night. And then while you're camping, people are just wandering over because they see your flag or your sticker and everybody's chatting. So it becomes this massive social event. And it also becomes this, so you have the kind of old salts who've been to 10 of them, I think in my case, I can't remember. And then you have this influx of new people. So even the way it's organized in teams of 10, you as a team leader are allowed to bring 4 of your friends. And then those 5 other slots are open to newcomers. Because in the old days, I would know 10 people, I would fill up my team, and the new guys couldn't get in anywhere. So now it's specifically designed by Mark and his team to let new people get in and get out there and get some experience and make contacts.
That's the thing. How shows that how the adventure rider community has just grown so fast. Is he had to do that to say teams you could be maximum 5, and then 5 others are people that random that sign up, because people were starting to complain. This is I'm trying to sign up and I can't get in there because all the teams are already full.
Yeah,
right.
But okay, so there was no way for the newcomers to actually get into the ride. So that's where that came in. So it tells how big this,
and we're talking,
it's growing.
I think last year was 40 plus teams on Saturday of 10 and 40 plus teams of 10 on Sunday. We're talking like 800 plus riders.
Yeah.
So the scale of it, I mean, it's really fun when you show up there, because you know when you roll up when you're meeting at Tim Hortons and there's your 3 buddies' bikes and you feel great. Oh, there's my buddies, they're already here. When you roll up to the Classique and there's
400, 500 bikes,
500 bikes, and those are your people. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. A lot of people watching may not understand Canada, and they certainly wouldn't understand French-English relations in Canada. And early on, when the Classique was on the rise, I lived in Ontario, and for me, because I speak high school French at best, badly. So for me, there's this like dark curtain on the Quebec border, and I know, and early during that time, I didn't spend a lot of time in Quebec, so it just felt like this dark curtain that I didn't know what went on. And then when I heard about these rides, I was very intimidated as an English speaker, not able to communicate in another language. And I had all these fears that were, obviously unfounded, but they were real at the time. I wouldn't be accepted. The French people would be rude to me, blah, 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 blah. And the Classique is growing. So for people that are watching that don't understand, like, talk a little bit about the French English thing, and then like why the ride's so good, and like who attends it now.
Well, I think the French English thing is just a non-issue. I mean, my French isn't great. I mean, I'm from Saskatchewan, and it's not an issue. I mean, we've had bilingual kind of teams pretty much every year that I've done it, and it's not an issue. And during the registration process, like if you showed up and you really were that unilingual Anglophone that doesn't speak any French, they'll just put you on a team where certainly the leader is bilingual.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue. And when you're at the campground, you're just hearing everybody speak whatever language they want. I mean, it's definitely not a thing. But I can understand there's trepidation there of showing up. There's already the trepidation of showing up at this massive event, and especially if you're a newbie.
Yeah, for sure.
And then throw the language thing on top of it. But that's a non-issue. And I think if you're open to just walking up to somebody and saying, I have the same bike, how do you like it? You're in. Or right. What tire is that, or jacket or helmet or whatever, man, that's all it takes, right? I mean, that's the way motorcyclists are in general. And then throw it into the cauldron of the Classique, where everyone's in this amazing mood. It's super well.
And when you're at that size of an event, people are not there for the language thing. We're all there for one reason, is to ride bikes and have fun, So
yeah,
at some point, like most of Quebec and all that, they're bilingual. People will make an effort to speak in English if they can and all that. And now also with the years, Mark has made it like he knows that, and he wants to attract people from the outside, like people from Ontario, the US, and all that come now. And as the questionnaire, when you want to sign up as, first of all, a group leader, they'll ask you if, besides you, do you know first aid and can you extract Fred from the bush because he has a broken arm? You know, do you speak English and French? You know, and then people, when you sign up, they'll point to teams that, okay, they have a bilingual team or it's more French or English or whatever. So it's not really a problem anymore. You know, everybody gets along and manages, and it's a great event. You know,
I think it's important that people understand that, because I remember feeling that way as a Canadian from Nova Scotia, moved to Ontario, wasn't sure about Quebec. Now, since then, I've had some of my best off-road motorcycle experiences of my life in Quebec. We've done rides in Quebec, and just like memories that like unbelievable passion and motorsports community there, and such friendly people, and like I've had a blast there. But I do remember that intimidating feeling about looking stupid because I couldn't communicate with people, and it's just the unknown. So anyway, I'm glad you guys spoke to that, because I think people that are in New England, like in that geographic circle, that they could attend that I would highly recommend it. It's just, what an adventure.
Yeah, we got a buddy, Peter Rollins, who came up last year from Maine, and he did the event, and he's coming back this year. He had an amazing time.
Yep. Cool. So anyone listening, encourage you guys, look it up, go check it out. Good people, and I love the fact that it's building this community and building the sport of off-road, because I remember the days way back when this was not happening, and off-road, you were a pariah. Like it was not a thing.
The problem is getting in.
Like, probably right now it's probably sold out for this year, definitely. And another evolution of the event. We're back to our original location, which, for the past few years, which is in Lachute, and Mark has capped the event to what we call the intrepid level of riding. So there's levels for every rider. So it would go from what was panoramic, which you can ride mostly pavement and 2 up, and it's very nice gravel roads and otherwise paved country roads. So it's a very touristy ride. And then to intrepid, which is some easier quad trails, I'd say, and a little bit of rough stuff, but manageable.
Like not your first season of riding, and in between there, you've got the classic.
You've got everything.
Classic Plus. You got 4 levels, and this year the extreme, which was the hardest level, and the Big Bertha, which is basically the extreme ride for big bikes.
Yeah, people with.
He's moved those into a separate event, so there will be Classic X in the fall, which will be the more hardcore.
And that's going up to another region, though, to have for the terrain and all that, which is same where they had the KTM adventure rally for a couple years. Since that moved to Calabogie region, so they're moving up there. But so there's events that's probably still open.
Yeah, but the thing to remember is that even if you're not registered to ride on one of the teams, you're still able to show up and do the demo rides and participate and kind of the the spectacle and the manufacturers and everything that's there. And there's also self-guided rides, I believe. So just because you didn't make it into one of the teams, there's no reason you can't roll in there and just spend the day.
Yeah, like we said last year, we did 1 day of riding, and we spent three and a half days there at the event, just because there was so much of other things motorcycle related to do.
And Horizons Unlimited's there this year as well. So the kind of world traveler overlander motorcycle community that's the biggest group of them. Horizons Unlimited, they're going to be there, which means if you want to show up and listen to people talk about their travels, there's going to be seminars and presentations in English and French on both days. So even if you're not going to do any riding, you could show up and watch some very interesting people talk.
Cool. Anthony is cueing me in the background. He said he wants to run another video, so hang tight. We'll be right back.
All right.
Suffering butt pucker when transitioning to gravel? Can't make friends with a big unwieldy bike? See a great trail but lack the confidence to commit? Getting in over your head in the back of Beyond?
This is the world's first hybrid enduro to adventure cross training camp.
At that point, all of my mental bandwidth goes to my front brake and my front brake lever.
Improve your adventure and dual sport skills by learning the basic techniques on our lightweight 250cc machines. Last year, Dork and the Road traveled with us on our legendary Grisbait ride.
Good morning, friends. I'm here in beautiful British Columbia.
Forgot to put my goggles on. There we go, bro.
After spending a week on small bikes, Dork really leveled up his off-road riding skills. His experience with the Traction eRag completely changed his perspective on both what he and his bike were capable of.
Boy, have my eyes been open as to what's possible, what's rideable.
So worth it to get outside your comfort zone.
This fun 5-day event is designed specifically for dual sport and adventure riders who are transitioning from street riding to exploring the dirt. This unique approach of small bike training to learn big bike skills will fast track your abilities and confidence both on and off the road. This is the perfect combination of training, riding, exploration, incredible scenery, great food, and good friends. After 5 days with us on small bikes, you will surprise yourself as what you are actually capable of. Follow the link to apply. These special events fill up quickly, so apply now.
Hey, Pete. That's
We're
cool.
back. I definitely want to talk about that later with you guys, the XT80V idea and what we want to try to do in 25 with you guys. But I want to take two things. One, I'll have to send Dork on the Road to La Classique. He would enjoy the culture. It's a completely new thing for him being in French Canada. So I think that would be cool. We should work on that.
We'll have a douche rope for him.
There's lots of dorks.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, he'll be among friends.
That's for sure.
Second thing, I want to take a wrong turn, or it could very well be a wrong turn. Let's talk about Ural. How do you even say that?
Ural.
I don't know. Every time I make a video that has that bike, I get a lot of comments about how I get a lot of comments about how I mispronounce it.
Yeah,
but I always respond that I also don't say Mexico. I say Mexico. So yeah, I mean, my Ural story started because in 2008 I wanted to buy a smaller, like, adventure style bike. So I went down to my local BMW dealer and I put down the money on a F800 GS. And before the season started, I got a call saying they were not going to bring any F800 GSs into Canada that year. So I decided to buy a Ural and keep it for one summer as a lark and then get rid of it. And then my F800 was coming in 2009. The F800 is gone. The Ural is still in the garage. So that's the one bike where there was a couple of seasons I didn't ride it much and I went to sell it. And that's the one bike my wife has never let me sell. And I don't do a lot of hardcore off-roading with it. It doesn't even have a skid plate on it. But that thing is just a smile factory. Like, you go to Costco, and when I bought it, people said, better leave early, because when you walk out to your bike, there's a bunch of people there. And you get either people who don't know what a Ural is, who love it, or you got people who know what a Ural is because they're from the former Soviet bloc or whatever, who go, why would you buy that piece of junk? Like, as soon as we were allowed to buy cars, we stopped buying that garbage, it's just a fun making machine where you go down a road with a 90 km/h speed limit. And if you can keep it at 90, you feel like you're right on the edge. I mean, you're leaning into the sidecar. I've worn all the paint off the lip of the sidecar from putting my body into the sidecar on, one turn. And it's more like sailing a boat with, hanging off to keep the thing from capsizing.
And it's funny because my director, who just retired about a month ago, he has a motorcycle permit and all that. And he goes to visit his in-laws in the US and all that. And his wife loves to go for motorbike rides because her brother has a 1200 GS and a Ural. So he says, I'll take my GS. You can take the Ural with my sister who loves and all that. And he says, I do it just for my wife, but that thing always tries to kill me.
Yeah.
He says it's a horrible machine.
It's a scary machine.
And I don't know what's with it, but it's funny because I sent you that ad for the one on Facebook Marketplace for sale. And all of the bikes I bought, my wife has kind of frowned upon it, it's like whatever and all that. But when I show up at Ural, says, "Oh, that's cool." I said, she would have said yes, probably right away if I said I'm buying a Ural. I don't know why, but anyways, it's this funny thing about this bike. It's
if you let your wife ride like I did a week in Northern Ontario with my wife up in Manitoulin Island, and after that week, she said, "I will never ride on the back of a motorcycle again."
Right.
And you can make sandwiches. It's the only bike I've ever owned where you're actually riding and the person beside you is making sandwiches.
And you can carry lots of firewood and lots of beer.
Yeah, it makes packing easy.
You got to make some of those camping videos get out.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of COVID camping videos I haven't put out yet where we have some Ural content coming up.
It sounds like, once again, being reduced down to what motorcycling is supposed to be, just like absolute joy.
Yeah.
We actually did a trip where it ended up snowing a bit, where Ivan was on his 690, our friend Jason was on a EXC 500, I think, at that point, or was he on his 640? And I was in the Ural, totally non-compatible bikes in terms of speed and ability to traverse terrain, whatever. And it was still a great trip. So that's the thing. I mean,
because you got to haul the beer,
yes, and all the stuff,
and all the firewood.
Even now, we ride. We did a lot of remote camping trips during COVID, and one of our buddies, Fred, it has a 250 Honda, so we just put Fred in front, and he just keeps it wide open, and on those big gravel superhighways in northern Quebec, and so you could have a bike that has 100 horsepower, and you're riding with someone who's got 27, and it doesn't really matter. It all just works out.
But it's better with Toms. I have to put a shout out to Pat, who was with us.
Yes.
Pat was one of my longtime buddies, and he commented, it's true. The first time I actually rode a motorcycle was on his farm. They were having to go at tractors and combines and shit. And I took one of his motorbikes and had a rip. And anyways, and he was with us on that trip. And we have our Cena comms, and when they work, they're great. And we're all talking. He's the only one that's not on comms. And we're on these forest roads where you can go really fast. And he's a race guy. He did the Canadian Superbike Championship when college and all that.
Yeah.
So he got into the adventure bike scene and all that. And he says, "Why are you guys slowing down so much and all that?" Well, you're not on the comms, so you don't know that Fred is telling us to slow down because he's maxed out.
That's it.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay."
Yeah, so if you want to talk about Honda quality, you can take a 250 Honda, fill it with luggage and 80 pounds of gear, and run it wide open throttle for days on end.
So that XT ADV video that we saw is a concept that we have witnessed and come about over a few years. And the concept is, we've been so far down the hard enduro rabbit hole for so long. When we've resurfaced and adventure has blown up around us, unbeknownst to us. So we decided to put some big bike training days on. And the very first one we put on, from the meet point to where we do the training, we've got a training facility here. Normally it takes 10 minutes to get the group up there. With the adventure group, it took an hour and a half of yard sale after yard sale after yard sale. That's how far disconnected we were from the reality of riding an adventure bike off-road for the first time, or new to it.
Yep.
And I was in shock for months about that experience and thinking, what's happening right now? Like, how are we going to change this? And what we realize is that when you get bit by adventure bike marketing, they sell you a fantasy. And that fantasy is, if you buy this motorcycle, you're going to get to do these things. And the person on the bike makes it look really easy. and now they're not to go down another path, but now they're putting Polterras on a whatever he rides, and like it's ridiculous the fantasy and the lies that are being sold by the marketing. But people get caught into this, of course, and I'm really happy that they're trying adventure. Like, I couldn't be happier that people want to actually do that thing. But there's a real disconnect between buying the motorcycle and buying all the gear and then going on a gravel road for the first time, or an off-road 2-track for the first time, even scarier. So we decided that we are, I guess, two things. One, the problem that they face are that the consequences of learning to ride off-road on a new 901 are so high financially, because we saw plastics coming off those BMW. Like, it was insane. Like, windshields broken, and they didn't even get to the training area. And I was just like, this is horrible. So there's high financial consequences of learning to ride off-road on a $15,000 to $20,000, $30,000 motorcycle. But worse, the consequences to your body when you drop that big machine could be catastrophic. I mean, a broken bone is one thing, but a broken femur in the middle of nowhere is really, really bad.
Yeah.
So what over all this experience with enduro bikes, it took me a while, but I realized that those men and women should be learning to ride dirt bikes off-road first, because all of those skills translate up the food chain. So I've seen a trials rider get on a BMW 1200 for the very first time. It was like an alien craft to him. And within probably 2 to 5 minutes, he was doing shit on that bike that I was losing. Like, he was trying to do stoppies on this BMW. And I'm just like, oh my God, nobody, like, this is insane. So trials riders, which we consider the best two-wheeled riders on the planet, the weirdos with open face helmets and onesies, they're the best in our opinion. And then it goes up the food chain to, say, riding a Goldwing, like, as far as, like, you're going down a straight flat highway and you don't really need a whole lot of technical skill. But the skills translate up, but they don't go the other way. So you could learn to ride your 901, but if we put you on a trials bike, you'd be on the ground most of the time. So that's where we came up with XT-ADV. We're taking adventure riders, we're putting them in our intensive camp. We're putting them on 250Fs. I don't know if you guys know that motorcycle.
Yeah.
Air cooled. If we were doing analogies to dogs, the F would be a Labrador Retriever.
Yeah.
It's a great family dog. It's probably not going to bite anybody, and it's not going to hurt you. It's fun and friendly. So I wanted to get your opinion in this. You live in the community that are coming to us for training, and I wanted to get your opinion on training on smaller dirt bikes to become better adventure riders. Any thoughts?
Well, certainly training period. Like, if you even take it one step farther, just the idea of, trying to teach yourself how to ski or anything else, the training thing, just, you save so much time and you avoid creating all these bad habits that make even future training more difficult, I think. And if you look at our experience, where we started on big bikes, 1150 GSs and F800s and that size of bike, it took a long time to kind of get just basic skills, because, as you were saying, the consequences to the machine can be dire. And this is, it's a transitioning from street, dropping a bike is a big deal. It takes a long time to figure out that you can drop the bike and it's not going to break, and that changes the way you ride a lot. Because if you're riding in with the idea of protecting the machine,
oh, that's no good.
Like, I got my new 901, and I was kind of thinking that was going to be my street bikes. It's not working out that way. And I got to a ditch crossing the other day, and because I was more focused on not wanting to scratch my new bike, I literally was paralyzed, and I stopped, and I got off the bike, and I walked it through the ditch, standing beside it, and got back on and rode off. And I said, that was so weird. I haven't done that in years, just because I was focused on protecting the machine. as opposed to just knowing what it could do. And I think the small bike thing, yeah, it makes total sense. If you look at Fred, whose first bike in the kind of off-road space was a CRF 250,
Still is.
still is. You know, learning to ride on that bike as opposed to an 1150 GS, you just see the progression. It just happens at such a quicker pace, because you're just not fighting this massive amount of weight.
And that's it. You have to be able in a position where you can learn, and then that you learn and that you are riding the bike. It's not the bike that's driving you, because if you can't control the bike, there's no point. And then there's the point that probably the bigger the bike, the more it costs. And right away you have to erase from your mind that, oh, I want to keep this like road bike style where it's nice and polished and shiny and not a scratch. Forget it. If that is one of the first things too, is that I tell people is, if you're worried about putting a scratch on your crash bars, like putting crash bars on your crash bars, forget it. Don't even go into the off-road world. You're after a bad start. And then if you can, like, I know the dream bike is your 901 or your 1200 GS and all that, but especially the last few years, they don't lose any value. The price of these machines is insane. Buy a smaller bike for a year, learn on it, crash it, and you'll sell it for 80%, 90% of what you bought for it, and then move on. But learn to ride the bike and not the bike that's like riding you.
And if you look at the bikes we have now, I started with an 1150, which I just never even dreamed I could take off road. So I didn't. I got the F800, which seemed like a small bike compared to the 1150. And then I bought a 701. And Ivan has recently bought a 350. Pat, we ride with, recently bought a 500. Jason, we ride with, recently bought a 500. So a lot of people we know have been downsizing in their bike choices over the years. And if you're in the perfect world is multiple bikes, because no one wants to drive an EXC 500 to Toronto to visit grandma, in 5 hours on the highway. But as you kind of get, into more challenging off-road terrain, you realize, this bike is really limiting on what I can do, because I'm never going to be one of those superstars in the Yamaha commercials.
Yeah, that's I think one of the big mistakes that the manufacturer is doing right now is it's great. It's impressive. I admire Paul Tyrus and all that, and Chris Birch on these big bikes and what they do, but it's totally unrealistic of what they're doing. It shows what the bike is capable of when you have an awesome rider on it. But for the guy thinking, I'm going to do that and maybe achieve 50%, forget it. You're not going to get 5% of what that guy's doing as a beginner on one of those bikes. It's not the bike, it's really the guy that's on it,
and the training,
sure.
The training
is so important.
Is that shortcut? I when I used to ski, I skied with people who never took lessons, and I saw how long it took them to be good at skiing, as opposed to people who took a lesson and after one season they were decent skiers. And I think motorcycling, off-road motorcycling, as opposed to the Goldwyn thing where you take your course, you get your license and you're riding around and maybe you do a course at some local club or something, adventure biking, dual sporting is a sport.
Yeah, I don't think people can understand the complexity of riding off-road in technical terrain on a motorcycle. Like there's a lot to learn, and the consequences are high. And what bothers me about the whole thing about the big bike is that you have one bad experience on a big bike off-road and you're probably not going to go back, because if you haven't made that choice yourself, you're
use the luggage. Well, I like having all my stuff, and one tip over in a sand pit with 0 damage, and the person has a realization that, oh, this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. And I guarantee you, if that first experience had been on a little 250 naked bike that weighed 185 pounds, where they weren't trapped under it and needed someone to lift this machine off them, the whole thing would have gone in a different direction for them. And that person never went off-road again, as far as I know. The dream died, and that was that.
The advantage of the off-road, like the enduro culture, is that there's an expectation that you're going to drop your bike a million times. You're going to crash. Like that's just part of the expectation and the culture of riding enduro bikes off road. Where I feel like, especially talking with you guys, it feels like that expectation isn't built into the culture of riding. A brand new 901, and people are just terrified about scratching their crash bars, which is even crazier.
Well, that's why the protection thing, where you say, someone will say that bike doesn't need crash bars because of the way the gas tanks protect something, and people are saying, yeah, but the plastics, they're not worried about the crash bars protecting the bike and it being disabled. They're worried about the plastics getting scratched. And then you go, man, that's going to be a tough moment. I mean, you see these pictures and people comment them on. Someone will go on a course for people who own big bikes, and at some point they fall, and then the bike's fine, and they'll take a picture of them just sitting on the bike, laying on its side. And people will say, well, that's kind of a stupid picture. Like, why are you so proud of the fact that you fell, and now you're taking this picture like you shot a rhinoceros? And it's because they've made that transition to realizing, oh, my bike fell down. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's like when I went to that Triumph thing in Tucson. It was, we were launching the Tiger 900, the new one, and there was a whole bunch of the Rocket 3 and all that. And we pulled into a gas station. We had to refill the bikes at the end of the day. And one of the girls was on a, tiny little lady was on a Rocket 3 and, stopped and tipped it over. I was like, oh, fuck, that's awesome, And right away, you see the mentality. It was like the big panic here is like, I dropped my bike, and it was like, this is like so bad and evil and wrong. And I was like, that's awesome. I was like, wait, I gotta take a picture. Like, hey.
And it's always funny that people think the faster I pick up the bike, the less severe the fall was.
Yeah, exactly. It's like she was hustling to get help lift it up. She's like, hey, you can stay there for another 10 minutes. Who cares? It's not going to go any further down to the ground.
Plus, it's not your bike.
And it's not your bike. It's a press.
In our world, we call that reaction the Olympic snatch and grab.
Yeah,
like they don't want anyone to see them, so they're like,
yeah, exactly,
struggling to get the bike up as fast as possible.
Well, one thing with the big bikes is, we all learned pretty quick that just wait for someone else to come along, because when you're, I'm going to be 60 years old next year. My pride is much more durable than my spine at this point in my life.
Yeah.
So I have no.
And I feel like, and you guys have gone through all the mental hurdles of dropping your bike, crashing your bike, tipping it over. You see your bike in the swamp, like it's floating. Like you've overcome that mental hurdle of just not caring about the machine anymore and caring more about the adventure with your comrades than the machine. And you're right. You can't progress in off-road if you're not going to accept that your motorcycle is going to get beat up and damaged.
And you also figure out, of all the bikes we've had, so 1150 GS's, F700, F800, the 690s, the 701s, the Africa Twins, T7s, things have broken, foot pegs have been snapped off, lots of bikes have been dunked underwater. Every one of those machines was restarted and got us home. And every one of those machines at some point was repaired and sold to someone who kept using it. Like, we never, I guess if you endoed a big bike 7 times end over end, it's the end. But you also at some point figured out, holy crap, these machines are incredibly rugged.
If you let away that thinking of, I don't want to have a scratch on it, and saying, okay, screw the scratches, who cares? It's going to scratched and dinged and dented and whatever. Yeah. These freaking bikes are solid. Like, it's unbelievable.
And for me, like my 701,
like we did. I know we went follow VR. Oh, did you come to follow VR last year with Pat, my buddy Pat? Once again, he was there like 3 days in advance. I showed up at the start of the event, and he has 500 had it looked like that funny guy that I can't remember what the name from the. Anyways, he had no front fender, no rear fender. It was chopped off. The plastic was snapped off because it was freezing cold and all that. And that thing kept on running. He had cracked a hole in the engine case and all that, and rode the whole weekend, no problems and all that. Went back home, had a great fun of time, And it's like, end with the bike over and over and over all weekend.
Yeah.
And it always ran, always started, keep on going. But ugly as hell at the end, you know.
Yeah, and you're gonna learn something about mechanics at some point.
Oh yeah, that you have no choice.
Yep. I just I think that adventure is about failure, lots of it, and what you learn through failure is so valuable, not only on the bike but with your life. More the coffee.
It's not,
and
it's not coffee.
That's Lug Tread from Van Cleek Hill.
Yeah, people don't realize how resilient the motorcycles are and how tough they are. They're actually meant to do a lot of this stuff, and you can take them apart in the field and get them running, and they're going to take you home. And that's where all the adventure is. You know, those horrible days where it's uncertain and something breaks down and it's dark and the bugs are out, and they're going to tell those stories for the rest of their lives.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yes, that was a brand new Ural that fellow had just bought, and on his first ride, basically off road, he flooded it out. We pulled the spark plugs, we pumped the water out, and at the end of the day, we all sat around, and he just had a huge smile on his face.
Yep, that's what it's all about.
But there was a moment of panic.
I could imagine.
And then when he looked around, it was funny because I think his words were something to the effect of like, nobody else seems worried about this. So I basically kind of feel okay because you guys are giving off the vibe like, yeah, we're just going to solve it and keep going.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a fun day.
I think that's the value of your group and the YouTube channel, and the fact that, you're normal people, normal weirdos who are out there riding off-road motorcycles, and you're having a great time. And sure, you guys have bad things happen, but nothing truly bad ever happens. It always turns out to be okay. And that's why I want more people riding off-road motorcycles, as many as we can get, because it's going to make for a better humanity.
Oh yeah, no, for
That's
sure.
for sure.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's we usually end up at a terrace that's a kind of a Harley hangout, and it's always I always find it funny because we'll pull up there on a Sunday, and there's just this sea of chrome and all these mufflerless motorcycles all beautifully parked, and then we roll up there and we're just covered in crap, and the bikes are filthy. And we walk in there and someone will take off a boot, as you saw in the video, and pour muck out of it. And I want, they're looking at us thinking like, what the hell happened to these guys? Like, where were they and what did they do? And then, and the flip side of that is I don't even really think that about those guys. I'm not thinking, man, I wonder what adventure those guys had today.
Right. Exactly. Well, boys, thanks so much for being on the show. I've been wanting to interview you guys for a long time because I've always been so, I guess, proud about the way that you guys are just putting it out there, warts and all, failure and all, and it's not this polished BS coming out of manufacturers. Like you guys are showing it the way it should be, and the way I hope people experience it. And anyway, maybe next year we can do something together. You guys can come out to BC. Maybe Riley, I'll see you next month.
Yeah, I should be out there.
Cool, man. All right, well, thanks, boys. Where can they find you? There. Oh yeah, Anthony's got it up there. And you can find us. Best way to get a hold of us or see our madness is join up for our newsletter, because our newsletter is it is unfiltered. And all you got to do is put your email in, and we announce all the stuff that we do underground, and it typically all sells out through our email list. And we're definitely keep our heads below the radar if we can. It's so much more fun.
Nice. Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. That's great.
Yeah, gentlemen, it was awesome. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon, and maybe we can do more in the future.
I'd hope so. I'd like that.
Yep.